Okay, I think we're recording now. So, okay. Good morning, everybody. This is TX21 Indivisible. This is our virtual office visit to Chip Roy in Austin, and we're going to be reading letters for Chip Roy's attention. So I'll just kick off. Reprehensible Roy. Yesterday, we learned that TX21 Indivisible will no longer be allowed to meet in person or virtually with your district offices in Austin. You have terminated our weekly meetings that we have held almost every week since you took office in January 2019. It's particularly ironic to me since I received a letter only 10 days ago from you in which you concluded by stating, quote, "I'm grateful to have engaged constituents because when you actively engage in our democratic process, the Republic can function as intended. I trust you will continue to share your thoughts with me on other matters important to you." Well, I guess that was just a big fat lie.
Yeah.
It seems you do not want to engage with us or allow us to share our thoughts with you. I can only assume that the banning of our visit is retaliation by you to our group calling out your Chief of Staff, Joseph Wade Miller, for making highly inflammatory, unprofessional, insulting, and degrading comments in a vicious tweet rant last week. I noticed that very soon after several of our group complained about these tweets to you, to your Chief of Staff, and to the Chairman of the House Committee on Ethics, the tweets were taken down. In fact, by Saturday, your Chief of Staff had disabled his Twitter account completely. Either that or he's just blocked a whole load of us. Maybe that was a preemptive measure being taken by Mr. Miller before getting blocked by Twitter itself for abusive language. Or maybe you, Mr. Roy, actually took some long-standing overdue action to address the repeated problem with Mr. Miller abusing and insulting the constituents of TX21. Or maybe you got wind of the damning article that was to appear this morning in the San Antonio Express by Gilbert Garcia entitled, "Representative Chip Roy's staffer uses Twitter for profanity-laced rants." If you've not seen this article, I can forward a copy of it to you today. This is the article. Anyway, as for our weekly meetings, Mr. Roy, we will not be silenced. We will continue to read our letters, forward them to you, your offices in DC, Washington, and Austin, and we will publish them, continue to post recordings of our weekly virtual meetings on social media. We will continue this until you are voted out of office, along with Donald Trump and the Republican Senate in November. Pack your bags, Mr. Roy. Goodbye, Mr. Chip, an engaged constituent.
All right.
Nicely done.
So, yeah, I added a little bit to that just this morning, as you might have noticed.
Yeah, I could tell. I'm glad you did.
So, hi, Mary. Glad you could join us.
Hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you
Good
guys?
morning.
How are
Good
you?
morning.
So let's just go around the board.
Okay.
Who's next?
Well, I guess.
I can go next.
Yeah,
My
go ahead,
the
Shirley.
Same as that one. Okay. The recent tweets to Chip Roy. The recent tweets of your Chief of Staff, Joseph Wade Miller, are indicative of how shallow Republicans have become. Instead of coherent ideas about issues and possible solutions, he uses insults, degrading slurs, and crude language to spew out his heart's desire to have abusive, murdering police move to Texas. Do you agree and support his thinking? You chose him for an important position in your support team. Are you and he an example of the saying, birds of a feather flock together? We already have seen that you have a temper tantrum when audience members ask you questions you don't like, and now your employees block your constituents from Twitter when their comments aren't favorable. Even more disquieting behavior by your staff toward the people you swore to represent in Congress has occurred. First, the group that met weekly with Morgan, your Austin office representative, was told she would be available for only one time a month for 30 minutes after several years of weekly meetings. Now that edict has expanded to no meetings with office representatives at all. Plus, you yourself have tweeted derogatory, untrue remarks about the nature of our group. None of this behavior is a surprise. You publicly stated at the beginning of your term that you didn't feel it was necessary to represent the people in your district that didn't vote for you. I would be one of those people. So, in summary,
Along with all of us.
in summary, I haven't had a congressional House representative for 2 years, and your most important office person has the thinking and language ability of a petulant 9-year-old child. November can't get here fast enough so that I can vote for Wendy Davis. Shirley Mount, you're a constituent that you don't listen to.
Here, here. Does anybody want to go next? A volunteer? No? Okay. I'll go ahead and read one. I've got 3, but I'm only, since we thought it'd be running short on time, I'll just read 1 or 2. But at the first one, reprehensible Roy. I don't care. So said Donald Trump yesterday, and sadly, we, your TX21 Indivisible constituents, received the same message when you arbitrarily terminated our monthly visits with your Austin constituent liaison. During the last 2 years of Lamar Smith's time in office, we visited his Austin office, and despite our profound differences with him, never once did he limit our visits, much less end them. However, all of that changed with your election, as it was out with a far-right conservative and in with an ideological ultra-right extremist. Indeed, the tone was set early on when you told us that while you would listen to what we had to say, that you would only work for the benefit of the barely over 50% of District 21 people who voted for you. And as the volume and tenor of your radicalism increased, you reduced our once weekly visits to monthly, and then yesterday you ended them altogether. However, if it had to happen, I'm happy that it was you, the representative, initiated the termination, as it starkly shows your disregard for our representative democracy. But this isn't over, Representative Roy, as we, your progressive constituents, do care about the perilous state of our country, that our country now finds itself in, thanks to Donald Trump and enablers like you. As such, we will work harder than ever to see you defeated on November 3rd. Our democracy depends on it. For true representation in District 21, Stephen Shackelford.
Okay.
Up, Steve.
Okay. Who wants to go next?
Letter.
I don't have a letter because things moved so quickly this morning, but I wanted to just share a couple of thoughts since everybody else has been talking about Wade's behavior and the increasing media attention on it. I was struck too, that came right on the heels of Chip cutting off the office visits. And I noticed that in that article, the reporter called Robert Donacci, the communications director in Chip's office, to ask him for comment. So I assume that Chip and the staff are mad about that article, and that's partly why they decided to terminate our ability to communicate with him in the office that we pay for, which isn't even open, even though Chip says we need to reopen America. His offices are still closed. But I wanted to comment on 2 things. One was Robert Donacci's statement that basically excusing Wade's violent and abusive behavior on Twitter because Wade is a combat vet, which is a pretty alarming way to cover up that sort of lack of control. I would expect a combat veteran to have better control over his anger management. And if he doesn't, that may be a sign that he needs some help, that maybe his service has had an impact on him that he has not dealt with. And maybe that person should not be in a position of power over others until he has enough sort of emotional control to act professionally and safely in a social environment. So I just wanted to point out, because it was not even a month ago that Chip was touting his bipartisanship by passing that PPP amendment, that really doesn't seem to last very long. Just recently, he's been calling us terrorists again. He called Black Lives Matter Marxists, which is an interesting take. So I just wanted to quickly run through some of, if people think that Wade's behavior online is alarming and worthy of media attention, let's just recap some of what Chip has expressed on his Twitter feed. He and Wade both have smeared a Muslim congresswoman and saying that she is funded by Antifa and Al-Qaeda. He's retweeted transphobic sentiments as jokes, putting trans men and trans women's lives at risk. He has claimed that some nuns and some evangelicals are front groups for George Soros. He has retweeted people who have called ACA recipients, quote unquote, lazy bitches. He has mocked Black Lives Matter protesters. He has made it clear that he opposes criminal justice reform. He said just yesterday, the day before, that he opposes Black Lives Matter, so he thinks that they don't. He has said that Austin does not deserve representation. He has said that those of us in Texas 21 Indivisible are 1, Antifa, and 2, do not represent Texas 21 in the slightest. That's a direct quote. Yeah, he said that we support looting. You and me, everybody on this call supports looting, according to Chip. Yeah, he said that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I support looting. I didn't know that.
I know, Mary, I never knew that about you. We have so much in common. And let's see, some of his other hyper-partisan stuff. Democrats are despicable. Democrats lie. Democrats are crazy leftists. These are all direct quotes from his Twitter feed. Democrats prey on fear. The Democrat agenda includes transgender athletes, which are scary to Chip. Radical left has taken control of the Democrat Party. And let's see, Democrat leadership is unserious and a complete joke. And what the very liberal Democrat leadership of Austin is doing to our town is shameful. So I just want to remind Chip, one, he doesn't live here. He doesn't live in the district. He has rejected every opportunity he's had, and we've given him many opportunities over 3 years to actually listen to the people in this district and our values. We've tried over and over, very politely, to impress upon him why the things that we care about matter to us and how there is room for him to respect those values. And every time he's taken the choice instead to insult us, to tell us that our values are bad and horrible, and he will work to destroy them. So Chip, I just want to let you know, we're not crying because we can't meet with your staff. We can probably do more effective things with our time, but I regret that you had this opportunity, that some very patient people, not me, but everybody else in this group, really tried hard to do the civil thing and help you do your job. And you made it abundantly clear you weren't interested in that. You are an unserious legislator. You are not a representative. You are uninterested in the actual work of the job, and you manifestly deserve to be unemployed in November. I very much look forward to voting for Wendy Davis in the general election. Thanks.
Man, that was
Good.
super.
That was good.
You're amazing,
That was
George.
super, George.
Yeah.
Bad.
Off the top of your head.
You give somebody a chance to show you who they are, and Chip always shows you what a horrible person he is.
Yes.
Every time. So when he loses in November, he's got nobody to blame for himself. He's made it clear as crystal exactly what he stands for and how badly aligned he is with the values of this district.
Well, I'm really happy that you pointed all of that out.
I'd like to go next. I'm going to turn on my camera. This is going to
Okay.
be a little bit dramatic. So, okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll explain in a moment. Dear Representative Roy, I am a Texas 21 constituent, And I am also someone who has been reactivated to non-essential work. I am showing you right now how I report to work every day. I do not work in the healthcare industry. I work in private retail. And this is how I go to work every day to protect myself and to protect my customers. I work in a business that is very small and can only allow a few customers in at a time. And I want to bring this to your attention because of the Reopen America platform that you have been pushing. This is what reopening America looks like. This is very much the reality. I work like this for 8 hours every day. In my center, there have been over a dozen different businesses that have had to close recently because of positive cases of COVID or exposure to confirmed positive cases of COVID. My staff, and again, I also should state here that my opinions are expressed by myself alone and represent no one else. But I've had my staff comment that they feel like they are the musicians on the Titanic playing as the ship goes down. People are scared. And just this morning, my local state representative, my local county representatives, and my local mayor have issued statements telling everyone, please stay home for your own safety and the safety of others. Chip Roy, your messaging is at odds with what your constituents need, as it has been many times in the last couple of years. And then, let me take that off. And then beyond that, I did want to make one statement going along with everyone else today. I wanted to read you my last interaction with Chief of Staff Wade Miller on Facebook. So I encountered Chief of Staff Miller in the comments sections on Chip's posts, and I found my way to Chip Roy's page, I should also say, because Robert Donacci and his team had banned me from commenting or reacting to the posts on Representative Roy's official page after I'd asked questions last year about the delay of much needed financial aid to disaster-stricken areas for what amounted to a parliamentary point of order. So once I found my way then to have a voice through Chip's campaign page, I started to notice that a man named Joseph Wade Miller was commenting back to me as if he was another constituent. After doing a LinkedIn search, I realized that he was not just a constituent. He, in fact, was Chip Roy's chief of staff. And I called him out on it. And he basically, anytime that I would post, up until the last week, would immediately comment back to me in particular. So I had said that I was through with Chip's virtue signaling and being dishonest with constituents in the area. Wade Miller immediately responded back to me and told me, you know what, go ahead, speak your mind. And I said, I'd love to do that. And I'll start with you. You are a troll. And you do not operate in a professional manner, especially as a chief of staff for an elected official. His response was that he would absolutely love to have a dialogue with constituents, but, quote, hard to do that when I'm accused of being a racist, a fascist, and a white supremacist all the time. The reality is that you'd rather vilify us than have an honest dialogue. I tried. If you'd like to have a positive relationship, perhaps start by not suggesting to the people that you'd like to have a positive relationship with that they are worse than Nazis 10 times a day. I'm here for you when you want to find common ground and find common sense solutions, just like Representative Roy did with Democrat Dean Phillips on the PPP bill that every Democrat voted for. So my response to him was, Wade Miller, you have also suggested to me that I support violence and terrorism. You have suggested that I leave the public forum of addressing my concerns to my elected official personally. Your fellow teams and communication staffing prevented me from asking questions and expressing about my elected representative over a year ago because I asked a critical question about the delay of funding to its disaster-stricken areas over a parliamentary point of order. That is why I came here. You personally and Chip Roy's office have labeled a grassroots collective in TX21 as supporting terrorism and violence after decreasing the number of times this office could address that this group could address Roy's local office. And now this has been done away with. So this isn't an isolated incident. I have talked to and can verify that there are probably more than 40 individual constituents who've had these kind of interactions with Chief of Staff Wade Miller and with other staffers. Like others have said, November can't come fast enough. You do not take us seriously. You really don't care. And it's incredibly abundant. And I hope that every person watching this does their due diligence and research, gets registered to vote, and comes out to vote for Wendy Davis, because it is high time that the constituents, more than 350,000 of them in Texas 21, have a real voice in Washington. That's it.
Very good.
Really
Very good, Jennifer. Christina, do you have a letter you'd like to read?
I do not have a letter.
Okay, is there anything you would like to say?
Well, I agree with everything that I've heard, and my particular, from the very beginning, my 2 points that I guess I would emphasize would be regarding the lack of good leadership and responsiveness to the local response. Texas has doubled again in the numbers for COVID, and Chip Roy is very interested in pretending that this isn't something that they have to take seriously. I think I just saw him post something that says European nations that shut down are now also having difficulties, and so as to say that we don't, it's just this constant data of denial and really support for a position that's not tenable and is going to cause the death of many Texas 21 and many Texans. And then I have a big problem with his attitude towards Black Lives Matter. He suggests that it's a Marxist group. He's obviously very, very out of touch with pretty much the rest of America, but definitely Texas 21. He's not serving us. He's not been representing us from the get-go. And so I would love to continue to figure out ways to let the rest of Texas 21 know what his real attitudes are and what his real positions are, because I don't think everyone is paying attention to his actual words and his actions, and so they're not aware of how little he does to actively not represent us, to actively not represent almost half of his, and I would say more than half, because a lot of people are not engaged and don't know. So if he's only paying attention to his voters or the people he thinks are his voters, he's really ignoring what the needs are of Texas, because we need representation whether we voted for him or not, and he has no interest in that. But much like a lot of the leadership that we unfortunately have, and then they're even constantly interfering with local leadership that does try to have policies that protect us, that protect LGBTQ, or in any category. They will undo what is just not in their attitude. So Chip Roy goes against things on a partisan basis, no matter what the evidence is, according to the needs of Texas 21. So those are my comments. And I also find it difficult that he could deny us the opportunity to meet with him. I believe that that's what he's doing, but I'm not sure that that is supportable. I think there has to be an opportunity to meet with your representative. I don't know that that's allowed, really, but maybe that's something to look into some more.
If his office was still physically open, he would have a hard time trying to kick us out, taking advantage of the fact that everything is online.
Well, thank you, Christina, for
That's
those
really
comments.
good.
You're welcome.
We really appreciate it.
We do.
Yeah, to say you didn't have anything to say, you had a lot of good
Yeah,
stuff.
You
to
had a
say.
lot
I
to
didn't have
say.
anything written down.
Well, it was
That's
still
really
a lot.
good.
Yeah,
did
well
good.
said.
Yeah, well said, Christina.
Very good.
Mary, do you have something?
Well, I don't have anything written today either. Today seems to be the day for free form. And I hate to be on the defensive, but I feel like I am this time. Some things that he knows that need to be pointed out to the people that he's trying to dupe on Twitter. For one thing, I really also have issues with him defining Black Lives Matter as Marxist. To me, that's just so inherently racist to say that, to attribute Black Lives Matter to long dead white guys instead of living, breathing Black people, mostly women, who actually spearhead this movement. That's just, it's racist and it's not true, and it doesn't matter if it is. He's also defined us as being part of Antifa and acting like Antifa is some kind of a terrorist group, which we all know that Antifa is actually a leaderless left-wing kind of group, and anything that gets done in the name of Antifa there's not really a leadership that you can praise or blame for anything done in the name of Antifa. Antifa means anti-fascist. It's the FBI has stated that it's an ideology instead of and it's an ideology. I can't talk. An ideology and a movement rather than a organized group. They didn't find anything. They haven't found any activities of Antifa that were terroristic during these protests. What they have found, though, is a whole lot of activity of the Boogaloo Boys and other right-wing groups that are hiding behind the front, pretending to be Antifa when they're really not, or just infiltrating the group, the protests. So they are the real concern. I also, when all of this started, we were accused by Republicans like him of being funded by George Soros. And when I got active in this group back in 2017, I had no earthly idea who George Soros was. I still don't have that good of an idea, but I had to Google it like everybody else, and I found out that George Soros is just some billionaire who funds some left-wing projects, and one of the few who funds left-wing stuff instead of right-wing stuff. So why aren't you complaining about people like Sheldon Adelson and people, billionaires like that, who are trying to influence policy with their millions of dollars that they donate? As I said, I'm feeling a little bit like I have to defend us when I really shouldn't. But that is a whole lot of purposeful misleading and misinformation that Chip and his people are engaging in. I'm hoping that the people of Texas 21 throughout the district are tired of hearing that kind of language from him and his staff. I'm looking forward to voting for Wendy, and that's really all I got to say today.
Well, some very good points.
I think, Mary, I think it's Chip Roy that seems to be on the defensive at the moment, to be quite honest. He's the one that's lashing out. It's usually a sign that he's feeling threatened.
Well, our funding, all I can say is, well, I bought some stamps a couple of times. That's the kind of place where our money comes from. What little money we have has been us, members of the group. And we don't have any money, but what money we have spent has been our money.
Yep.
Brian, do you have a second letter?
Actually, my second letter talked about Roy's rabid tweet about Black Lives Matter being a Marxist group. And since that's been mentioned several times already, I think I'll let that one lie for the moment.
Okay. I have another short one. I don't think it really covers anything that has been mentioned this morning, so I think I'll go ahead and read it. Dear Representative, in name only, Roy, did I hear a cry of desperation in your June 23rd commentary in the Federalist? The title of the piece was, quote, "It's time for Republicans to stand up for America already," end quote. As well, you must know, it looks like Republicans are starting to desert the GOP in droves. June 23rd also included a report from Reuters titled, quote, dozens of Republican former U.S. national security officials to back Biden, end quote. They include former officials in the Reagan and both Bush administrations, as well as many high-ranking retired military officers. And to that, Republicans from the Lincoln Project who are running ads against Trump. And let's not forget white college-educated Republican women who simply have had enough. Do your epithets of radical leftists, Antifa, and Marxists apply to all of them as well? Time for a reality check, Representative Roy. But then again, you're so far down the rabbit hole, don't bother. Time to pack your bags, Representative Roy. Stephen Shackelford.
Very nice.
Hey,
Very good.
Any other comments?
I have a closing comment that just because everybody else has kind of touched on this, and I wanted to say something hopeful, I guess. So I was raised by Republicans, and I was taught that the reason that we had government in the first place, the reason that people, created this idea of democracy and giving up some of our power to an organization that could tell us what to do, the reason we did that was because there were problems that were too big for one person to solve. And my mom was a nurse, and my dad was a rocket scientist for JPL. He'll put a man on the moon. So those are two things, public health and space exploration, that individuals really, there's not really a libertarian approach to those things. So that even if you favor small government, if you live in a democracy, you buy into the idea that our elected government is there to handle some of these problems that individuals cannot, by their nature, handle on their own. And right now, one of the reasons I feel so stressed is because I feel like Trump and Chip and all the Republicans in charge of the government right now, they're expecting me to deal with a pandemic and an economic crisis solo.
Yes.
I'm supposed to figure it out, just wash my hands and go out
Yeah.
there and restart America. And that's, you know, as someone who was raised by Republicans, it's like, you had one job. Your one job was to handle the big problems that solo practitioners could not handle. And not only is Chip not willing to do that, he's pretending that job doesn't even exist, that government doesn't even have that function, and he's telling us he wants us to serve him burgers while we struggle with this vacuum of leadership that we have. So I just was thinking the other day, in January, when we get a government that actually acts like a government, it's going to be such a different environment, because we're going to know that we're doing everything we can as individuals. We're staying home, we're washing our hands, whatever we have to do. But also, there is an infrastructure and resources and talent and people with power and connections to the rest of the world who can actually do something, can start addressing this problem and understand that that's their job to do. That's something that Chip has completely rejected as anything that he's interested in. And that is why I say he is fundamentally unserious about the work of leadership and the work of representation. And that's why I'm looking forward to voting against him in November.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's why we have a federal government, to solve problems that individuals and individual states even can't do alone.
And if you're not willing to do that, get out.
Do it anymore.
Well, the thing
Go be
is
an investment banker again, Chip.
Right,
But-
anything.
but just funding, but doing it through giving a whole lot of money to private corporations and
What-
privatizing everything like they're doing, that still kind of begs the question of even if you're doing it that way, you still have to gather the money together to pay. I mean, we're
Yes.
still paying for that.
We
How would we
have a
have roads?
representative democracy. We elect people outside of the business
Yes.
world to do this for us, because the understanding is businesses have different interests at heart. The government is supposed to be by the people,
By the
for the people, of
Yes.
the people, not the corporations.
Right. Well, I'm ready to
Supposed to
revolt
help
with
keep
you.
us alive. At bare minimum, they're supposed to help keep us alive. And you see Chip and Trump and all these Republicans, and honest to God, once they figured out that it was black and brown people who were dying from COVID, they didn't care. 120,000, what do we care? It's not our rich white friends. Heck with them.
Well,
Wow.
yeah.
Gosh,
I'm-
everything you're saying today, I'm ready to
I
revolt too.
know. I'm ready
Yes.
to revolt.
Right. Just 4.5 more months. We're going to get there.
I'm in, yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm in the high risk category of, you know, people who could get COVID and die from it. And I'm feeling really kind of hung out to dry by, you know, I'm willing to stay home. I haven't gone any farther than around my block in 3 months. I haven't gone anywhere. I am tired of it, just like everybody else is, but I feel like I could probably do more if we had better policies.
Yeah.
If we had better and more consistent policies, I would be able to do a little bit. So I'm kind of feeling like, well, you know, I've paid my taxes all of my life and I'm willing to do my part, but I feel like my part has been increased by people like Chip.
Mhm. Yeah. I have a question for Jennifer. Are you still there, Jennifer?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah.
And once we turn off the recording, I have some more things to share with you guys. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier that you had reached out to, I guess it was the Austin American Statesman regarding the
Yes.
of Joseph Wade Miller. Did you ever get a response from them?
I haven't. I have reached out to contacts with Texas Signal. I've reached out generally to the Austin American Statesman because most of my contacts are in different parts of that organization.
Mhm.
I have reached out to general inquiries and then put inquiries back through friends to BuzzFeed and now this. Especially since now this did a story on
Right.
Representative Roy's behavior last year.
Mhm.
So I'm glad to see that the story is getting traction, and I'm hoping that it will be further amplified, you know, to the national level.
Did your contact at the Statesman, did that include Jonathan Tillove?
No, my
I sent
contacts
it-
are
yeah.
in other departments. So
Yeah. I
if
actually
you
sent
have
it-
if you have someone specific, please, like, you know, like the more that they hear, I think the more that it will become, you know, a newsworthy story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I sent a text to Jonathan this morning, so
Oh, you
we'll
did great. That is super. That's
pick
super.
up on it. I was kind of implying he got beat to the piece of news, Antonio Express. You know,
Sort of thing.
missed another opportunity. I said, but never mind.
But did you specifically mention the San Antonio article?
Yeah, I sent him the link.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, I'm gonna resend that because I had sent before the initial blog link. I'm going to resend the Express News link to everyone that I had reached out to.
Okay, great, because I saw that it had gotten written, but I couldn't get to it from where I was, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't open.
Shut off the recording actually now because we kind of finished.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
You want to turn your camera on, Jennifer? So
Yeah.
I'm
Hang on a second.
recording now.